If anyone is trying to get into tech and do any work whatsoever with clients, I highly recommend taking a design thinking course. Hello everybody, welcome to my channel. This is Bernie Uche, and once again I am in a tech state of mind, and I hope that you are too. Today I get to talk about something that I think has really positively impacted my career thus far, more than almost any other concept. And I apply it to everything that I do, and I hope that you coming out of this will do the same, and that is design thinking. But to set the tone, last year I was invited to host a workshop at the Black Secondary Conference at York University. The theme was Afrofuturism. Examine the past, question the present, and imagine the future. I actually attempted to film a vlog style video for this workshop. I did get 2 clips, which I'll show you, but otherwise I was way too invested in the facilitation of the workshop that I completely forgot to document the thing. That said, I want to walk you through my workshop materials. Before I do, I thought I should tell you more about why I am so passionate about design thinking. Now, design thinking itself is a nonlinear iterative process that teams use to understand users, challenge assumptions, redefine problems, and create innovative solutions to prototype and test. Now, design thinking itself puts people at the center, emphasizing empathy, creativity, and iterative experimentation. Our society is biased towards action, and that is a really good thing. But sometimes it's not the right action. And too many times we've built solutions and products to solve a problem that's supposed to have a positive impact on our bottom line first and foremost, but we forget the human experience oftentimes in doing so. So what happens? This perpetuates the issue, or sometimes it just persists, which will cost us money in the long run regardless. Now, someone put it to me this way, that sometimes in trying to fix a problem, we buy or build a new technology problem. By leveraging design thinking principles, we can put humans at the center of our solutions, allowing for more robust, sustainable long-term results. And this is what this workshop was all about. So let's dive into the workshop content itself. So I had about 30 students in the classroom, and I actually went around the room one by one, asking them all what they wanted to get out of this session. I wanted to understand why they signed up for this design thinking session. One of the key principles in design thinking is diverse, empowered teams. Oftentimes leadership comes to the table and they make decisions for everyone, often without direct involvement for the entire stakeholder group. They make assumptions, and we all know what they say about assumptions.
Make an assumption, you make an ass out of you and umption.
Design thinking asks us to really think about all possible stakeholders and have them represented in the room as much as we can in order to make sure that we aren't missing out on important perspectives. With that in mind, I asked every student to introduce themselves and tell the group what they were hoping to get out of the sessions I said. They were about to spend a few hours together. Many of them did not know each other at all. So I felt this was necessary to help them build the spirit of collaboration through empathy and understanding. I then put the students in groups of 3, and I asked them to think of a pivotal issue in society and think about how tech could help solve for that. They then went to go discuss and come together, voted individually on the topics that they came up with, and each group came out with something. And they had to pick a student who would come up and speak to the class about the problem that was chosen. We then quickly went into an empathy mapping exercise. Now, I love empathy mapping. This is a technique that's used to help understand what a user thinks, feels, says, or may do when presented with this problem or when experiencing the problem at hand. This really helped them build empathy as the activity suggests, centering what they were doing on a particular person's experience. And we asked them to pick a name. for the person, right? So that they're thinking about this as a person and not just a user. And we talked about how a lot of the time companies and product teams think of their market and they think of their buyers as that market. And those buyers are users. And that word user is important, yes, because these are people who are actually going to use the software. But when you think about people, consumers, buyers as users, that implies what you're going to get out of them, as opposed to thinking about them as human beings and thinking about the totality of their experience. And that's really the power of this exercise. And I've got some examples of the empathy maps that the kids created over here. Now, once they've thought about what a user or a human being would think, say, feel, or do about a certain issue, we then ask them to group like-minded concepts into categories and themes and keep those themes in their heads for the next exercise, which is the need statement. So the need statement followed this template here. And we wanted them to take the themes from their empathy map and see if they could use those to apply them to a need statement. And that need statement now becomes this governing principle that you're going to solve for effectively. And it was really fun to see them get into that mold and think about that and debate that. And then of course we have them vote, and it's all a democratized experience, right? So we have them vote to come up with what their ideal need statement is. And again, they pick someone different to come up to the front of the class and not just say what the need statement is, but explain the need statement as well, which is really cool. So once the students had their need statements down, we then got them to think broadly about ideas that could come up to help solve for this need. And we really wanted them to think big. And the activity was called a Big Ideas Vignette. So we wanted to break them out of conventional thinking and start generating bold, wild, wacky, sometimes even crazy ideas. Because the crazier idea, the more creative you're thinking, the more fun you're having in trying to solve the problem, which usually leads to innovation, which we can then make more practical, as opposed to starting small and trying to work our way up. We like to start big and then whittle it down for practicality. So I told them a story to embolden them. If you've ever been in a design thinking workshop, you've probably heard the story of the bear and the ice and etc. But for context, power companies needed a way to solve a recurring problem. If you're in North America, you understand this better than my friends in Nigeria, where I'm from. But heavy ice buildup is a big problem on power lines and can snap the lines. And instead of standing workers to chip away at ice manually, which is extremely dangerous, they needed a new solution to this.
And here's how they got to that new solution. A group of supervisors and linesmen were brought together to try and brainstorm an idea. During a coffee break, one of the linesmen retold a story of how a bear had chased him for a mile. That led to the facilitator retelling that story. Someone in the group heard that and thought, hey, why don't we get one of those helicopters and put honeypots on top of every pole and train the bears to climb up there and shake everything down in pursuit of the honeypots. And this crazy, wacky idea led to someone realizing that they could use the vibrations caused by the helicopter blades to effectively shake the snow and ice down. And yes, that's what they've done ever since.
There's a lot going on, and maybe you've seen the clips of bears in Russia shaking trees while people are working out on them. I'll insert that here if I can find it, which is very funny. However, not a practical solution, but it got the juices flowing that we need to find a way to shake the ice off. And that led to this idea of vibration. And how can you generate that vibration to shake the ice off? Helicopter. You can see how we went from crazy wild idea to something that we could actually do. So we use this idea to get them thinking really, really big. And some of these ideas were absolutely wonderful. And again, I wish I had more footage of the kids actually going through the exercise, but I realized I was trying to respect their privacy, and I didn't have, I didn't know if I had permission to do that. So I got the little that I could. But we were running out of time, so we decided to go into the prioritization grid. Typically, after the prioritization grid, there's some other activities, but we decided if we end here, we've gotten the bulk of what most industry representatives and practitioners and enterprise would actually do. And that is to prioritize. So we took these ideas that we had, right? And then we gauged them for feasibility and value. So the feasibility is talking about, can we get this done? Like, what's the likelihood that we can get this done? The effort involved, complexity, all that kind of thing. And the value could be monetary. It could be experience, whatever it is. We didn't want them to think too, we didn't want to box in their thinking too much around that, but just what do you think is going to be most valuable to the organization, or to the community rather, because this was a community problem we were looking at. So, we had them discuss as per usual, and then they discussed and they voted and they, debated, and then they plotted them out. And you can see examples of these here, right? And this was really, really cool to see where they got to. And when you're working, as I am, as a consultant with clients, when you get to this point, there is usually disagreement amongst the stakeholders, but it's positive disagreement. And it's really great to see people get to something like a consensus once they've evaluated all their options and discussed all the permutations. It really is eye-opening, not just for us, but for them. And they usually walk out the room going, wow, like we really got somewhere. And then you are now able to laser focus as a consultant, as a salesperson, as a product manager, as a designer, to help solve your client's problem now, because you have a greater sense of clarity. Now, usually what we would do, especially if you're designing a product, is start prototyping a solution. So you have your big ideas, you have your no-brainer, right? Because in the prioritization grid, to the further right, you have your no-brainers, in the middle what we call big bets, and then more to the left are don't do these things, they're unwise. So usually we would ask you to take your no-brainer and start to rapidly prototype. Now, when we're doing these as team building exercises, it's take some paper, some pens and whatever and start building the thing. When we're talking about development product teams, it's usually, start putting code together and let's build something really quickly. Usually this could be over a couple of days, sometimes if you can in the same session, but usually there's a prototyping activity that occurs, followed by a storyboard so that you can get the user journey down for your prototype. And then we present back to everyone individually so people can see and get an understanding of what it is that we put together and what we believe that journey will look like, and the value as well. Like I said, we didn't have time for that, but what we did is really the core, I believe, of what you would need to do when working with clients, particularly in tech. And it was great to see the students engaged. It was an interactive session. And this is the same feeling, as I said, that clients typically have when they go through something like this. And every time I do any form of design thinking, or I take, design thinking activities, I always come out energized. I always come out feeling really good about what we've achieved together, my clients and I, because like I said before, we now have a human-centered direction for where we want to go. And if we can all center on that, we're more likely to have a sustainable long-term solution to the problem that we are trying to solve. There are many more activities than this. I'll show you where you can find those if you want to pick them up and learn about what they are. But as I said, design thinking, I learned it at IBM when I used to work there, and it's been one of the most fulfilling things that I've ever learned, and really changed my perspective, really helped me be better as a solution engineer, and now a much better consultant. And if anyone is trying to get into tech and do any work whatsoever with clients, I highly recommend taking a design thinking course. I am more than happy to help any of you learn more about this. Spend some time and we can sort of work through how to do this and how to become really proficient. There's a certification that you can take as well, which I'll link to in the description. But this stuff is really, really powerful and really, really necessary. And I could not recommend design thinking more than I already have. So I hope that you enjoyed this. As I said, I initially tried to film this last year and couldn't get the clips. And also, as I mentioned in my previous video, which I'll link in the description, I got burnt out, so never put it out. So I'm really happy that I get to do that today. And I hope that you subscribe to the channel for more content. And if you engaged with this and you really enjoyed this, please leave the video a like and leave me a comment and talk to me about your experience with design thinking, or just tell me what you feel like you've learned. And I will see you in the next one.
Till death do us part or go down in history like vintage cars, like a couple spars. You will be loved, especially after dark.